If you have questions, concerns, and are just lost when it comes to planning for retirement, meet Steve Hoyl and Derek Caldwell of the Hoyl Financial Group. Steve, you and I were kind of talking about just how expensive it is to take kids or grandkids, out to do something fun.
This past Saturday, Jess, I kept my grandbaby. We had so much fun. We went to Chuck E. Cheese. And Jess, I was thinking a lot about when I took my kids to Chuck E. Cheese. And, my son Hayden loves Chucky. He would just go, Chucky. And I mean, he was emotional. He loved Chucky. And, back then, Chucky danced. Today, Chucky just kind of stood there. But, Jess, I was really thinking about money and finances, and I just took McKay and I and ordered a medium pizza, and it was $18.59. We brought her little juice bottle, and I got a drink, was about $4 for this cup. And then we ordered some tokens to play, and the minimum token package was $20. Then we ate pizza, we hugged Chucky, she danced the whole time, and then we went to these machines to play, but she was really too small. So I ended up giving the card to a family that had a bunch of kids. But then I realized I made a mistake because she wanted a Slinky, and then I bought her this sucker. Grandparents do that to their kids, Hillary's like, oh, hi, But Jess, I was thinking about what it costs to go to Chuck E. Cheese. When my kids, they're 33 now, let's just say when they were 6, I just couldn't believe what it cost. You think you're going to a kid's place. And then I saw families that had 5 or 6 kids. They were having a birthday party. They were having 12 other kids. I was just thinking about, wow, a lot of people at that age think, well, I'll save for retirement down the road. And I don't think they realize if they just paid themselves first and funded their retirement out of their paycheck, how much money they would have in retirement.
Well, I think it's also about finding that balance. I mean, as a father and a grandfather, I'm a mother as well, the two, that you do these things. You go to Chuck E. Cheese, you go to the kids' bounce house places. It's $20 a kid to get in, and then you pay all this money for food and drinks and unnecessary games for dollar store toys. And before you leave, it's $100 here and there. And you go, well, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing we'll do for our kids. They're always going to remember this. Point being is that you got to find the balance. You can't go to Chuck E. Cheese every week, maybe not every month. Maybe you go once every 6 months and you store some other money away. You know what I mean?
I think that's exactly right. And then, I was thinking about how when I got in the business when I was 26, I'm today 63. So what is that? Lots of years ago, 36,
that's a long
37
time.
Years. And, I had people that retired back there, and they got a new car and they planned for a budget. They did not plan for a security system at their house. They didn't plan for a cell phone bill. They didn't plan to keep their kids on their cell phone bill. Living in DFW, my daughter moved to a new house, and it's a little bit further out. And really the only way to get there is to take the tollway. It's called the Chisholm Trail. And I'm telling you something, it's expensive. Not only do you have Chuck E. Cheese and gas, I filled up yesterday. You just think about what things cost. And I think about retirees today who think that they have plenty of money, but they don't have catch-up buckets, Jess. Because, I used to tell people every 5 years, every 6 years, you're going to need to balance your income. And what I mean is you need the same buying power, not the same amount of money. You need the same buying power as when you're retired. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Just talking about how expensive things are, whether it's gas, and we know that those prices, the foreseeable future doesn't show that coming down. But the other day I was at dinner with just my family of 4, and we just went to a local Mexican restaurant, and, the kids got kids meals. We split something. So at the end of the day, I thought, well, this is going to be the cheaper way. It was like $75. And that was before a tip. I remember the days you would go, hey, let's go to Mexican. It's the cheapest thing to eat.
Oh,
now
yes.
You can't do that. I mean, everything's astronomical. So I guess that's really the question here as we look at prices both today and 20, 30 years ago. Obviously, it is, worlds of difference here. And when we talk about retirement planning from now to, let's say, 30 years ago, Steve, what's the biggest difference people need to understand right away?
I think they need to understand one is risk. I think so many people right now are starting to feel, oh my gosh, they opened their 401k and it's down 4%. This was supposed to be the best economy we ever had in the last 100 years, and it's not proving out to be that way. There's a lot of people who think they don't have much risk, and they come and sit down with us, and they don't realize that 98% of their retirement monies, their 401k or their TSP or their ESOP, whatever it is at risk. And they don't realize what a big correction could do. Right now we're having these small corrections. But Jess, one big correction could wipe people out. They could have to work 5 more years. So when people come and sit down with us and we figure out what the risk tolerance score is, and it's very different for a couple, let's say a husband and wife, because opposites attract. And I think that's a really interesting thing. So one person thinks, oh my gosh, the market's just going to continue. We're never going to have a problem. The other person's going, wait a minute, I worry every night about it. So I really think that's important to bridge that gap between there. Is one right and is one wrong? No. But I really think that you need to take, yes, some risk, but it needs to be balanced risk. It needs to be planned risk. You also need to have money that's sustainable, dependable, protectable, that'll be there when you need it.
Absolutely. And just to go back to a point that you made here, risk is a difference between now and 30 years ago, right? The market, the position that it's recently taking, because, we talk about the risk in the market. Everybody knows that, right? You're putting your chips on there and you're hoping that things just keep going the right way. We also know the market can change on a dime. Well, 30 years ago, many retirees, they weren't as exposed to market swings as they are now. So that's the big difference when Steve's talking about risk. So things weren't as volatile, I guess, as they are today than they were 20, 30 years ago. So now that we know that, and listen, we live in a different world with inflation and taxes, how different is the planning conversation today when someone is close to retirement, let's say right now, during a volatile market, compared to a possible volatile market, let's say 30 years ago?
Well, Jess, I think what's different about it is one social media post could make the market correct 30%. One newscaster's prediction just takes a little bit for a huge correction. So what I think is so important is that people really sit down and understand, like we were talking about the risk, but if you're within, let's just say you're within 2 years of retirement, people don't understand, but you dollar cost average into your retirement, either once a month or every paycheck. You add to those retirement dollars. So wherever the market is at that point, you're buying shares into the market. Well, when you get close to retirement, you need a dollar cost average right back out of the market to make sure that you don't have one big correction and it wipes you out. I mean, it happens all the time and people don't realize it. And then it's too late, Jess. They don't have time on their side.
Absolutely. I mean, it even goes back to the old analogy probably your grandparents or great-grandparents said, is that we live in a faster world now, right? Faster concerning the market, faster concerning how quick the market can change, the volatility, faster concerning the rules of retirement that have changed. And, you mentioned about having that sustainable income. So no matter what the risk, no matter what the volatility is, you have to have a bucket of money that's going to be sustainable. And let's talk about this for a moment, because 30 years ago, more people could count on pensions. Let's be honest. Those are very few and far between, if not non-existent these days. And a lot of folks, they put all their eggs in one basket when it comes to their 401ks or IRAs or even personal savings. But there has to be a shift of that burden and the stress. And I bring that up because that shift needs to go to more of a guaranteed income opportunity. Right, Steve?
Absolutely. Back in the day, everybody had what we call this three-legged stool. They had their Social Security, they had this fabulous pension, and then they had their kind of emergency money, retirement money. But Jess, it's not that way anymore. So many people come to us and say, I need that income. And, a lot of people describe all the things they want, and it's an income annuity. So it's to make sure you have income each and every month for the rest of your life. And if you have a spouse, for the rest of their life as well, Jess. I tell people, carve out some of your money and create an income strategy. Then take part of your money and, yes, take a little risk. If you have this income all figured out and you have these catch-up buckets figured out, then you have some of the money in the market, which is fine. But it's money that you hope so. The no-so money is that income strategy. But Jess, I think the biggest thing I'm seeing from what inflation has done to people right now is they don't have the same amount of emergency money, percentage-wise, as they did back 5 years ago, because they've had to use that money. A lot of people had to fix a lot of family issues during COVID. I mean, a lot of people lost their job. A lot of people had sickness. It was a really tough time. And a lot of people have not had time on their side to rebuild that emergency fund. But Jess, it is the cornerstone of retirement. And we have more people come to see us because we talk about all the time, let us help you fix your emergency fund. There's so many neat ways to do it, and it's really easy when you think about it and you do it with intention. You set up a plan. Over the next 3 years, I'm going to create this much money in emergency fund. Maybe you bank draft it. I've seen people accumulate a lot of money where every time they use their debit card, if it's 39 cents, the rest of it, that dollar, goes to savings. And you would be surprised how many people do that. And then I think the next thing people do is, get out the old yellow pad, Jess, and do a T-square. And every time you pull up to that ATM and take that money out, you write it down, and you write it down where it went on the other side. And you keep that list so you know where your money's going. People say to me all the time, I don't want to do a budget. You don't have to have a budget, but you have to know where your money goes, Jess. It's paramount.
Steve, I find these days, especially with how advanced things are with technology, as I said, the world's moving faster and faster. A lot of folks say, you know what, it was just simpler back in the old days. Well, I want to know about retirement. Was retirement planning simpler 30 years ago, or did it just feel simpler because people had different expectations?
I think it's both. I think that technology has really helped us over the past 36 or 37 years develop some tools that have really changed our clients. If you think about it, we have several families. We have all three generations right now. The parents are old, and, those parents had a pension. Think about one family that we helped so much. And just when they retired, he was 55. She had never worked outside the home. When I went to see him, they always had homemade peanut butter cookies, sugar-free, and they were so good. Oh, my God. I mean, those cookies, I just couldn't wait to get them, okay? And back then, I was a pretty big boy, so I didn't need to be eating the cookies. But anyway, they had a pension, and so he left a big oil company at 55, and his pension was about 16% more than what his payroll was every time. Okay, and then plus, he wasn't going to have to be paying into these funds, so they had a lot more money. They kind of thought it was the lottery, Jess. What I just kept saying, what about inflation? We're not going to spend much money in retirement. We're not going to go anywhere. You know how it is. They bought a little RV trailer. They didn't use it. What they did was raise their grandkids and their great-grandkids, and that's where their money went, Jess. And they're the greatest people. I can't say how wonderful they are. But what I want to tell you is, all of a sudden, 10, 15 years later, the buying power of that was so small, and they had to use their other money. But people didn't know what they didn't know. And Jess, it's interesting. As I talk about the tools in our toolbox, I learned everything from our clients to help their kids with, because it's like, oh, that pension sounds great today, but it's not. And, just switching gears, I've told this story before, and, my dad is in the mid stages of Alzheimer's now, and we're so close, and I see him all the time, but, every 4th of July, except the last one, we would barbecue and we'd sit out there, and we had these old chairs, Jess, that we used at a rent house one time. And there's some green paint on them. But I'm telling you, those chairs are so valuable to us. So we'd sit them out by the barbecue pit, and he would start talking about his Social Security and what it bought and how today it does nothing. I mean, it's like play money. He's 78 years old, and he retired in early 60s. Now, it didn't matter about the Social Security, but he's really right, because he says so many people think that's a retirement plan, and it's not, Stevie. And I said, yeah, right, Dad, I do that for a living, but he's so right about that. People really factor that into their pie chart a lot bigger of what it will take care of in retirement. Because as inflation goes, every time you have an increase in Social Security, what goes up? The Medicare tax. I mean, it always happens. So you don't really get a raise. So I just think that people don't know what they don't know. And you know what's funny? We talk about technology. Most of the people come to see me say, my neighbor said, ChatGPT said, I heard on TikTok. I was reading, Jess, there's people with no education telling people what to do out there. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, you get opinions kind of anywhere and everywhere these days. Everybody has one. Everyone's putting it out there on social media platforms. You have to really be careful of where you're getting your information from. You've been doing this for over 3 decades, Steve. You're a retirement planner. I want our listeners to know and understand that. You and Derek in the office there, you guys have like over 60 years of experience together. So crucial to sit down with somebody that has experience, not somebody that just got some, he said, she said information and made a video and put it on TikTok. I mean, realize where you're getting your information from.
We had this couple come see us. Their neighbor sent them to us. He had been to talk to one Edward Jones guy, and she had been talked to someone else. I can't remember who it was. And we said to them, okay, how long have they been doing this? Well, so they left, and I said, you just go ask them. One of them had been doing it 1.5 years, and one of them had been doing it 3 years. And I mean, you look at Derek and I, all my wrinkles, well, I've been doing it forever. But Jess, I think what's important about that is not how long we've been doing it, how long our clients have taught us what we're doing.
If you'd like to sit down with Steve and Derek or a member of the Hoyl Financial Group, visit retiretexasstyle.com.
Investment advice offered through Hoyl Wealth Management, a Texas-registered investment advisor able to provide investment advice in states where it's registered, exempt, or excluded from registration. Content contained herein should not be construed as an offer or solicitation for investment advice or for the purchase or sale of any security, insurance, or other investment product. Investments involve the risk of loss, including possible loss of principal. Please consult with a qualified financial, tax, accounting, or legal professional before implementing any ideas or strategies discussed here. Content provided is obtained from sources believed to be reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to its accuracy or completeness. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities offered through Steve Hoyl, Texas Insurance License 716036. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. Steve Hoyl is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Steve Hoyl is licensed in your state, please call 806-371-9473.